Hey there, Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of Way of the Underhive. This is a limited series that is showing you guys how to build up starting rosters for the different gangs that you can play in your next Necromunda campaign. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about House Escher. We'll be talking about the gang's strengths and weaknesses. We'll be talking about all the individual fighters as well as how to best equip them. At the same time, we'll also talk about some of the game mechanics involved with clan chemistry, what you can use for this clan with their alchemy skills that they have, as well as talk about starting rosters that you can use for your next Necromunda campaign. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this video report on a roll. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about House Escher's strengths real quick. So just like every single gang in Necromunda, every single gang, it kind of plays a certain way. And when it comes to House Escher, they're just like every other gang. They have some really good strengths and some pretty obvious weaknesses. House Escher gangs traditionally go for a better fast-paced, aggressive playstyle. One of their strengths that they have last guns everywhere, okay? So last guns for this gang only cost 5 credits for the members of this game to equip them, and they're really, really cheap. Not only are the last guns extremely cheap, they're also very reliable weapons as well. And the best part about them is they're easily upgradable with different things like focusing crystals as well as hotshot last packs, makes them more powerful as time goes on. And because of their speed and agility, they actually make very good combat fighters in close combat, both in charging their opponents, they can bring the pain, as well as counterattacking against their opponents as well. So it makes them super deadly, especially in the counterattacking phase. Because of their high agility, they can usually dodge attacks and then respond back with a really powerful offense. They also have excellent initiative profiles as well. If I remember correctly, I believe every member of this gang is at a 2-up initiative as a standard across the board. So they'll be dodging, leaping, making impressive jumps, all kinds of stuff. They'll be able to maneuver across the battle very, very quickly. Not to mention, when it comes to using poison gases as well as toxin weapons, they're basically the #1 game when it comes to those. So if you're really liking using chemical weapons, toxic weapons, gas weapons, especially when you throw in their clan alchemy ability for their game mechanic, they're just going to destroy their opponents using those chemical weapons. So now that we're done talking about their weaknesses, their strengths, let's go and talk about their weaknesses real quick. So while they're very fast and aggressive, they have really low strength and toughness values. I believe that they all start off at toughness 3 for the most part, but some of your fighters start off at strength 2. So while they're really quick and they're really awesome at fighting and stuff, their strength and toughness doesn't let them last very long. They're kind of like glass cannons in that sense. And just like glass cannons, they also break fairly easily as well. Their cool stat is average at best. Most of the gang members have around a 7-up for their cool, except for the leader. Their Juvies as well as their prospects, they even have a worse cool stat. So because of that, it's not really good for them for the most part. You're going to really definitely need to have your leaders as well as your champions hanging around your fighters in order to mitigate that. Also at the same time, while chemistry and the chems that they can use is a huge impact for the gang, it's also extremely pricey to use this, alright? So it's very, very helpful for the gang, but it comes at a cost. Now, this problem with the cost is easily to remedy. All you need to do is hire an apprentice clan chemist for 75 credits for your gang, and when you get enough reputation to hire that hanger-on. And the reason why, because it helps kind of mitigate that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail when we actually get to the clan chemistry part for the gang. But there you go. There's pretty much the strengths and weaknesses for all the Escher fighters. So now that we're done talking about House Escher as a whole, let's go and talk about their individual fighters and what their strengths and weaknesses are for starting out players. Alright, so since the release of the House of Blades, which is the rulebook that is dedicated to House Escher, there's been some kind of major changes throughout the entirety of the gang. So let's go and talk about each of their fighters real quick. So first of all, your gang leaders are called gang queens. They cost you 125 credits. They're excellent in both combat as well as in shooting. So because of that, to take advantage of both of those, it's best to build them to do both jobs. Give them a really good shooting weapon as well as a good close combat weapon, and they can pretty much run around and do everything you need them to do. Now, for her skills, you primarily want to use leadership for the gang queen. And like I said before, it's because the cool stats for a lot of the psychological stats for a lot of the members of the Eschers are not very good. So because of that, your leader actually has pretty good stats when it comes to that. For example, if we were to talk about her stats specifically, she's got move 5, 3-up weapon skill plus a skill, 3 strength and toughness, 2 wounds, 2-up initiative, and 3 attacks. So like I said before, really, really good. Now when it comes to her psychology stats, she actually has really good ones. Her leadership's a 5-up, her cool's a 5-up, her willpower's a 6-up, and her intelligence is 7-up. So focusing her with her leadership skills is going to be a huge boon and a way to offset and to mitigate the lower psychological stats that a lot of the other members of the Escher gang have. So because of that, you want to focus on leadership skills for her primarily. Now, she is the core of your gang because of that fact. So because of that, your opponents will target her quite a bit because she kind of keeps the whole gang together, so you do have to look out for her. You might want to put on some skills like for her, for example, like What's a flip up, for example, might be one that you want to put on her as well, because that way, if she does get hit and pinned, all she has to do is take an initiative test, and basically she can get right back on her feet again. So that could be a possible way that you could equip her if you want to, with that spring ability. But for the most part, though, you're going to want to focus on the leadership skills. Alright, so let's go and talk about your gang matriarchs real quick. So these are your champions of the gang. They cost about 100 credits apiece. So let's go and talk about them real quick. So first of all, for their stats, they got movement 5, 3 up weapon skill, ballistic skill, 3 strength and toughness, 2 wounds, 2 up initiative. They got 2 attacks. And for their psychological stats, leadership, they have a 6 up, cool is a 6 up, will is a 6 up, and intelligence is a 6 up as well. Not to mention, because they are a gang champion, they could also use their bottle leadership, where basically, if you fail a bottle test during the end phase, you could have this fighter passes cool check, it does not flee, and any fighters within 6 inches of this fighter also don't flee either. So that's really, really important as well. Also, they can also do group activation with more participant as well. So that's the thing you want to keep in mind when it comes to the gang matriarchs, and why they're kind of important for the gang as well. Now, when it comes to their role within the gang, crazy enough, actually, the main reason why you want to keep them around is for those good leadership bubbles, as well as those good group activations. But they're also really good in close combat. Now, you might be tempted to equip them to be combat oriented, which is perfectly fine. You can do that if you want to. But the best way to actually use these gang matriarchs is for them to carry your heavy weapons as well as your special weapons for your gang. They're pretty good. Ballistic skill kind of helps them out with that as well, so that's the reason why. Plus, if you're looking for a champion to do close combat, you should really use Death Maidens for that. But we'll talk about that here in a second. Now, for these characters, you do want to give them the spring up skill for them, and the reason why is because they're going to be shot at quite a bit by your opponent. Your opponent knows that your gang matriarchs and your gang queen are primarily the glue that holds your game together, so because of that, they will be targeted quite a bit. Spring up is nice because if your champion should get hit but not wounded, instead of getting pinned, they can just take an initiative test, which is a 2 up, and they can immediately get back on their feet again without losing an action to do that. So because they still have their 2 actions once they get back on their feet again. So that's the reason why you want to keep up that spring up. It's better than the Nerves of Steel ability, because at least with the Nerves of Steel you can't get pinned, but this way you don't lose an action if you do. So that's the reason why you want to keep that in your game matriarchs. Now, if you're looking for a champion that's really good at close combat, you can't go wrong with using Death Maidens. Death Maidens are a brand new champion that was brought in with the reinforcement box sets for each of the different house gangs of Necromunda. Now, Death Maidens are champions. They cost 115 credits. Let's go and talk about their stats real quick. They have movement 6, so they are very, very quick. They also have a 2 up weapon skill as well as a 3 up ballistic skill. So when it comes to shooting and fighting close combat, they're really good. Their strength is still a 3, but their toughness is actually toughness 4, so it makes it a little bit more survivable as well. They have 2 wounds as well as a 2 up initiative as well as 3 attacks. Now, for their leadership as well as their psychology stats, they have an 8 up for leadership, so they're not really meant for leadership, but they have a 4 up cool stat as well, so that's kind of nice. They also have a 7 plus for their willpower as well as 7 plus for their intelligence. And because they are a champion, if they pass their cool test, all other fighters in 6 inches of them also automatically pass their cool test as well. So that 4 up cool test, that's going to be really nice. The problem, though, is that she cannot group activate. That's the only problems with her. So because of that, with their toughness 4, they make excellent close combat killers. Give them good close combat weapons and close range shooting weapons as well for the most part when it comes to your Death Maidens. Now, the way that the Death Maidens are really going to help out is with toxin weapons. They have a special rule attached to them called Poison Blood, which means that weapons wielded by this fighter that have the toxin trait are now more potent because they basically dip their blood in their weapons into their blood to make it extremely toxic. Which means that if you make a toxic trait, if you roll a natural roll on D6 for that target's toughness, you may re-roll it. So that way you can get a better result and use those toxic abilities as well. Not to mention, they also have access to the Finesse skill, which is a brand new skill that was released with Necromunda. All those skills are awesome, and Death Maidens actually take full advantage of it and make them super deadly at the same time. Alright, so let's go and talk about your gang sisters. These are your gangers for your Necromunda gang. They are 50 credits apiece. When it comes to their stats, they actually have pretty good mediocre stats. They got 5 movement, 4 up weapon skill and ballistic skill, 3 strength and toughness, 1 initiative, 3 up initiative. They got 1 attack, and they also have 7 up for leadership, cool, will, and intelligence. So like I said before, for their psychology stats, they're pretty much mediocre, right, kind of like in the middle at the same time. Now, however, because of that, though, there's a good side to all this. Sisters are actually some of the cheapest and most efficient gangers in the game. And the reason why that is the case is because when you look at their equipment list, they can equip last guns. Now, while last guns may not be very powerful, they only cost 5 credits for this gang, so that's nice. Last guns are not bought for their power, they're bought for their reliability. Last guns have the plentiful ammo check, trait, and they have an ammo check roll of only a 2 up anyway, so they're always going to be able to reload these weapons. Very, very reliable, also extremely accessible. Not to mention, you can also upgrade these lasguns later on throughout the entirety of the campaign for more deca. So for example, you could put hotshot laser packs, which gives them a +1 to their strength and -1 AP, costs 20 credits, and at the same time, only increasing your emerald to 4 up. You could also get them focusing blast projectors as well for the weapons, which also gives them a +1 to their close range score, which is really, really good for these guys as well. Not to mention, they're not bad in close combat either. If you used to get them some of their combat skills or their agility skills from leveling them up over time, they can pretty much own close combat, so they're really good that way as well. Alright, so up next we're going to talk about the gang prospects known as the Wild Runners. They cost 45 credits apiece. Now they got some pretty decent stats. They got movement 6, they also got weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4, so they're a little bit better than your little sister, which are your juvies. They only have a 2 strength though, so not very strong, and they have a 3 toughness, 1 wound, 3 initiative, 1 attack. Now for their psychology stats, they're not really good. They have a 9 up for their leadership, a 7 up for their cool, 9 up for willpower, as well as 9 up for their intelligence. So that part's kind of sad. However, what you want with these gang members for the Wild Runner, what you're really buying is not necessarily the fighter themselves. What you're actually really using them for is what kind of abilities they bring for your table. Basically, they're good, close assault fighters made for combat, and while their stats may not seem all that impressive, that's not the real reason you're purchasing them. You're purchasing them because they're able to recruit phalanxes for your gang as well. Now, in case you're not sure what a phalanx is like a small little lizard cat creature that they can bring. They can hire up to 3 of them. But when you have a Wild Runner and you group activate her, she actually activates her phalanxes as well that go with her, and those guys can cause some serious problems. They make excellent screening fighters because of those phalanxes, and their large numbers can really put a hurting on your enemy, especially attack and max. The phalanx, which is the name of the creature, is named after the actual tactic that ancient Greek hoplite warriors used to use called the phalanx. Think of it making a wall or a shield wall of some sort to protect your fighters. That's what they do really well at, and that's why you want a Wild Runner. You want to actually equip them with as much phalanxes as you can, so that way you can cause some problems for them. Now, it may seem kind of weird to equip them with bows. You do have weapons called wild bows. They may not seem all that impressive, but when you look at the things that they can bring, like acid arrows, poison arrows, explosive arrows, it makes the bow a little bit deadlier. Plus, whips might seem like a weird combination to put on your Wild Runner as well, but don't forget, whips also have what's called a versatile weapon trait, which means they can attack at distance without having to charge anybody. So, when you compare that with your phalanxes, which are going to be charging the nearest target towards them, and you have some backup attacks with your Wild Runner hitting them with a whip, you can see how that dangerous combination could really help out, especially if you decide to shoot with bows at the same time with explosive arrows, or using the alchemical properties of poison arrows. It could be a really deadly combination. And so while we're on the topic of phalanxes, we better as well talk about them as well. Now you may be wondering, well, Commander Cheapskate, why are you including them in your gang build? Well, if you hire one Wild Runner, you should be at least hiring at least 2 of these phalanxes to be in your gang. They cost 50 credits apiece. They have movement 6, 4 up weapon skill, 3 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound, 3 initiative, 2 attacks. Their leadership and psychology stats for leadership is 10 up, 7 up for cool, 9 up for willpower, 11 up for intelligence. Now you might be thinking, well, these stats don't seem very nice. However, they do actually have a couple of things going for them. One of them is, of course, is Venomous Bite, which is one of the reasons why you bring them up. If you roll a natural 6 on any of their attacks, that attack gains the Toxin trait, which can be really helpful against high toughness enemies. And like I said before, they all kind of activate together in one slot, right? So that's good way you get them into the scenario. So for example, you might have one Wild Runner, but she brings with her 3 phalanxes, but she only still counts, and her phalanxes actually only count as 1 fighter for scenarios. So if you're in a scenario that caps the number of fighters that you have, you could actually bring more numbers onto the battlefield with that as well. Now, the thing you also got to remember too is that these phalanxes have what's called the reckless trait attached to them, which means that they attack anything directly in front of them within their 90-degree vision arc. So keep that in mind when you bring these guys on the tabletop. Don't put your Wild Runners in the back with their phalanxes, because their phalanxes are attacking your own team members. You got to put them up front to use them as a human shield basically, and have them attack things for you. Alright, so the last person we're going to talk about is the Little Sister. These are your juvies for your gangs. They cost 20 credits a piece. Their stats are alright. They got 5 movement, 4 weapon skill, 5 up ballistic skill, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, 3 up initiative, 1 attack. Their psychology stats have leadership 8 up, cool 8 up, will 8 up, as well as intelligence 8 plus as well. Now the reason why you bring Little Sisters and juvies in your gang is for one simple reason. They're very cheap easy to purchase, their equipment is all not expensible, and they're disposable as well, which is actually kind of sad to say it that way, but that is the truth. Juvies throughout all your gangs, you use them as human shields. You use them to protect your more important fighters, and if they die, they die. But if they do survive and gain some experience and level up, then all the better. And if they can survive, they can become better fighters, in which case you can equip them with better gear as time goes on as well. So every single gang should have at least 2 juvies within it to act as human shields. While it may sound horrible to say it that way, that's exactly what they're used for. Alright, so let's go and talk about Alchemy within your House Escher gang. Now, I'm really not going to get into it too much just because it's too expensive to actually use as a game mechanic for your very first starting build, but because it's such an important factor of Escher gangs, especially as they level up through the campaign, we're going to spend some time and talk about it. Now, like I said before, this will actually have a huge impact on your game, and the reason why is because this is so important is because Alchemy is a great way to customize your gang to take on any threat that they might encounter. Basically, you got 3 ways that you use alchemy within your gang. You have what's called stims. These are like combat drugs that you give your fighters for enhanced abilities. You could also use it for gas, which means that for all the weapons that use a gas effect, you could also use it that way. And you could also use it for ammunition for weapons that use the toxin trait. So these are all good ways you can, kind of use them and customize it for your gang. For example, if you're going to be in a situation you might be fighting a pitch black condition against Delax, for example, you can give your gangs the stim known as Wide-Eyed, which basically gives them bonuses to fight in pitch black conditions. For example, if you want to use the gas mechanic for your weapon, let's say you got a Nightshade Kim Thrower. Now, while it may be a template weapon, you could buy lifting gas, which basically increases the range of your Kim Thrower by 6 inches. So you pick a point, go 6 inches from that point, and then you put the template down. Great way to get some increased range for your Kim Throwers, for example. Now, when it comes to your ammunition, things like, for example, your needle pistols that you use for your death maidens, you can put paralyzing ammunition on them, which is great for low strength enemies, which means that if your opponent can't pass a strength test, they can't do anything. It's like they're being webbed by a webcam, which opens them up for being just butchered by your death maiden, for example. Or, for example, if you want to use maiming ammunition, which is a great way to troll your opponents. What ends up happening is if you take someone out of action with a weapon with maiming poison on it, what ends up happening is that you get to roll for your opponent's injuries. You get to roll twice, and you get to choose what injury gets applied to their fighters. So if you really want to troll your enemies, that's a really way to do that as well. Now, like I said, we're not really going to get into it too much just because when you're just first starting out your gang, it's going to be extremely expensive for you to put these abilities on there. So the best way you can do this is by recruiting a apprentice clan chemist to offset the cost. Now, a clan chemist is a hanger-on, which is basically just for your gang only. You're the only gang that can actually recruit them. They have 75 credits for those guys. Their stats are mediocre at best. They got 5 movement, 5 up weapon skill, ballistic skill, 2 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound, 3 up initiative, 1 attack. For their psychology stats, they got 7+ for leadership, 8+ for cool and willpower, and a 6+ for intelligent. But the reason why you want these guys is for their special rule. Their special rule is known as experimental elixirs. It says a gang with a clan chemist reduces the cost of alchemical elixirs by d6 times 10 credit to a minimum of 10 credits. Roll each time a chem alchemy elixir is purchased. So this can help you offset your costs, so that way you can get these in your thing as well. At the same time, you also have a rule called Last Rites, and it says if one of the gang's Escher gang matriarchs or gang Escher queens is killed, either through a memorable death or through a critical injury result, then the player may roll a d6. If the result is equal to or lower than the number of advances the fighter has, the player may add a Death Maiden to their gang. The newly added Death Maiden retains none of the dead fighter's equipment, injuries, or advancements, and is for all intents and purposes a brand new fighter. So if you want to look for a way to gain some new Death Maidens to your gang, it's a reliable way to do so. So you really don't want to use them so much for shooting or for fighting. What you really want to use them for is for their skills. Not to mention, they also got the fixture skill as well, which gives you d3 times 10 credits, which is always helpful. Alright, so now that we're done talking about the strengths, weaknesses, and the composites of your gang, let's go and talk about your gang list. So these are some of my top 3 starting builds for a gang for a brand new campaign for Necromunda. So the first one I call it the Cheapskate build, and the reason why I call it the Cheapskate build is because all you need in order to create this gang is either one, own the original box set that had both the Goliath and Escher gangers in it to make this gang, or just buy one box set of 10 Escher fighters. And this list will cost you 1,000 points, where you use up all your credits to make this gang. So, some of the features about this. Your Cheapskate build will consist of 2 fire teams. One will be your support element, the other will be your assault element. Your gang queen, your gang matriarch number 2, and sister specialist will actually make up the assaulting flanking element of your gang. Or matriarch number 1 and your 3 gang sisters in this list will make up your support suppressing element. So what you would do is you use your suppressing element to shoot at your enemies to keep them pinned, and then your assault element will then flank and then take them out in close combat. It's an excellent build for a brand new player as well. It gives you a bit of the safety of being able to shoot from distance, but it gives you enough combat power to engage in close combat as well. let's go and talk about what makes up this gang. So first off, you have a gang queen. She's going to cost you 215 credits in total. You're going to equip her with a plasma pistol as well as a shock whip and mesh armor. So she's got good shooting, good close combat, especially in close combat. And the skill you want to give her is either the inspirational skill or the commanding presence. The inspirational skill is going to be really helpful for your leadership bubbles, while commanding presence will allow you to activate multiple fighters. Now, for your next member of your gang, you're going to want to have matriarch, gang matriarch number 1. She's going to cost you 205 credits for her. She's going to be equipped with a bolter combo weapon with a needle rifle attached to her as well, so that way she can use both the bolter as well as a needle weapon. She's going to have a fighting knife as well as flak armor, and she's going to have the dodge skill for close combat. So like I said before, she's going to be more your suppressive element leader, shooting at long range with the bolt gun, using needle weapons later on, and using the toxin trait on that weapon to full advantage. Now, gang matriarch number 2, she's going to cost you 170 credits. She's got a plasma pistol as well as a last pistol, and she's also got flak armor and the dodge skill. So that way she's got your two-gun character who's going to lead your help lead your flanking elements and really shoot it up in close combat. Now after that, you're going to have a gang sister specialist. She's going to be the specialist of your gang. She's going to cost you 215 credits. And the reason why is because you're equipping her with a Nightshade Kim Thrower. You're also giving her a stub gun as a backup weapon, as well as flak armor, as well as Kim Synth. That way she can help out with her toxin trait for the Nightshade that she has for Nightshade Kim Thrower as well. So 2 of your fighters will start being able to take advantage of the Kim Alchemy rules later on as your gang full develops. The last 3 members of your gang are 3 gang sisters. They're all 3 of them going to cost 65 credits apiece, and they're all equipped the same. They all have las guns as well as flak armor for that long range shooting. Alright, so the next build we have is what I call the standard build. And the reason why it's called the standard build because it requires you to have the starter box of 10 Escher at the same time buying the brand new New Death Maiden / Wild Runner box set as well. Now you'll buy both those box sets, and this roster will basically be 1,000 points, so you'll be using all your starting credits as well. Now this one consists of 2 fire teams like the previous build. You got your support element and your assault element. However, the assault element in this one is much more prevalent in this build, so getting up close, getting in close quarters combat, that's what you're going to want to do for the most part with this list. You do have suppressing elements, and your suppressing elements does include las guns, but you also have photon grenades as well to blind your opponents and engage those opponents in close combat. This build is a very high risk, high reward playstyle. High risk in the sense that you got to engage in close combat to your opponent, and if you roll very well, you'll just able to destroy your opponents pretty easily. However, if you roll poorly though, your opponent's going to wipe the floor with you. So player beware when it comes to this build. So let's go and talk about its components real quick. So first of all, we have a gang queen. She's going to cost you 215 points, and she's equipped the same way we did with the Cheapskate build. She's got a plasma pistol for shooting and close combat. She also has a shock whip as well as mesh armor, and instead of a leadership skill though, you give her the spring up ability, so that way she can get back on her feet if she should get knocked down. Next, you have a gang matriarch. She's got 175 credits for her. She's equipped with a plasma pistol as well as a last pistol, and she also has mesh armor and the dodge skill. So she's your close combat pistolier, using both a plasma pistol and a last pistol for lulls and for a lot of shooting as well. Now, for close combat, you also have a Death Maiden in this gang as well. So she's going to cost you 215 points. You're going to equip her with a needle pistol as well as a venom claw, so that way she can take full advantage of her poison blood ability. You can also give her Kim Synth, so that she gets bonuses for those toxin traits. She also has mesh armor as well, and you're also equipping her with smoke grenades. And the reason why you're using smoke grenades is that way you can make zones of free fire where you can't get shot at. It also covers your advance forward, and you're also going to give her the hit and run ability. Now with the hit and run ability, what that does, that allows her to make a charging attack against an opponent, attack them, and then if she also then basically pull away without being a counterattack. So what she does, she charges in, hits the opponent, disengages, and does not get hit back in return. Makes her really, really deadly, especially if you're fighting multiple opponents. So she is really, really awesome built that way. Now, next comes your gang sisters. You have 2 of them, and they're both equipped exactly the same. Both of them will cost you 75 credits. Both of them have las guns. They also have stub guns as well for their backup weapons, and they also have dum-dum rounds as well, giving them that 4-up in close combat, and with shooting if you need to as well. And they also have flak armor for survivability. So these ladies can be used for both your suppressing element, and if you want to, you can send them in with that 4-up strength with the stub gun with dum-dum rounds in close combat if you want to. Now, we also have a wild runner in this unit as well. This wild runner costs you 195 credits. She's equipped with a wild bow, no upgrades for the arrows, as well as a whip, and she's also got flak armor. She also has 2 phalanxes also working with her as well as photon flash grenades. So this girl is going to be your flak and your chaff unit. You're going to send her up forward. Her phalanxes will engage targets. She'll be able to engage opponents at distance with her wild bow, or if she's already stuck in the close combat, use her whip from a distance using the versatile trait to do that as well. She can also throw out photon flash grenades to blind your opponents, so that we have better chance at fighting them in close combat. And the last thing you have in this gang is a little sister. She costs you 50 credits. She's going to be armed with with a stub gun with photon flash grenades as well as flak armor. She pretty much does the same role as the Wild Runner by throwing those photon flash grenades to blind your opponents, so that way you can sneak in and also destroy them in close combat. And this pretty much builds up what I like to call the standard build. Alright, the last build we're going to talk about was what I like to call the Major Moneybags build. If I was to have a mortal enemy, his name would be he or she would be called Major Moneybags, what they would be called. And the reason why this one's called the Major Moneybags build is because you get to buy, one, a box of Escher, and secondly, you'll need to buy weapons kits, either from Games Workshop or from Forge World, whichever one you want to. Those are a little bit more pricey. That's why I call it the Major Moneybags build. Now, this list will also be worth 1,000 points as well. Now in this build, you have lots of long-range shooting attacks with some pretty expensive equipment for your weapons that you have for your loadout for your gang members. Now there are no Death Maidens or Wild Runners in this list, so for the close combat stuff that might kind of be a problem, but you got enough firepower to cause some serious problems for enemies with the equipment that you'd be using for these guys as well. This also uses a lot of smoke grenades as well as photon grenades to get close to distance with your enemy as well. And it's also a little pricey in terms of money for actually buying the miniatures because you need to buy those weapon kits for your gang. So let's go and talk about this one. So first off, your gang queen. She's going to cost 215 points. Once again, you're equipping her exactly the same way in all three lists. She's got a plasma pistol, a shock whip, mesh armor. She's also got the spring up ability in case she gets knocked down. Now you have two gang matriarchs in this gang. The first one's going to cost you 220 credits. She's going to be armed with a plasma gun, as well as a stub gun for a backup weapon, as well as mesh armor. She's also got the dodge ability in case she gets engaged in close combat. And you have another gang matriarch. She's cost 230 credits, and because she's got a combo weapon. The combo weapon is a combination of bolter as well as a plasma gun. So you have two plasma guns in this list, and she's also got flak armor as well as a dodge skill. Now your first gang sister specialist, she's going to cost you 115 credits. You can equip her with a grenade launcher with frag and crack grenades, and you also got smoke grenades in order to make those smoke screens. And she also has flak armor as well. After that, you have two gang sisters who are equipped exactly the same. The two gang sisters are equipped with las guns as well as flak armor, and they both cost you 65 credits apiece. And then finally, you have two little sisters. They're both equipped exactly the same. Both of them cost 45 credits apiece. Both of them will have stub guns with dum-dum rounds, so that way they have a 4-up strength in their close combat attacks and in the shooting attacks. And they have photon flash grenades to blind your opponents, that way you can close a distance and engage them in close combat if you want to. So this is the Major Moneybags build. So as you can see here, these are the three different builds I would use to start off your gang with. So with that being said, that pretty much does it for the gang lists. Alright, you people, that's what we got to talk about now for it talks about the Escher gang. That's pretty much my overall assessment of the individual fighters, as well as some starting rosters you can use for your next Dominion campaign or Law & Order campaign or Death and whatever kind of campaign you want to play for your gang. With my closing arguments, the Escher gang is a very, very aggressive playstyle. They're very competitive in terms of shooting and in combat, and they can do both pretty well. However, speed and aggressive gameplay are going to be your friends on this one. You just don't have the toughness or the wherewithal to basically outlast your opponent, unlike a Goliath gang. So because of that, moving quickly, finishing off your enemy fast, dirty, and just killing them straight up is the best way for you to move forward. So if you're like a very aggressive playstyle, this is the gang for you. So that's good for this week, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is valuable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.